the hang on. Where you at? Come on. All right. We're gonna add Gene Robinson to the stage. And right on. Hey guy.
Hey, how are you doing, Ruben?
Oh, I'm doing mental hamstrings backwards now that I got you on StreamYard. That's the easiest way to do it. I'm like, I had never done the the Zoom interaction. So we're live on YouTube and Facebook right now.
Okay.
All right, and
I'll
I
try to be
got
on my best behavior.
okay. Well, because of you know my stint with the drone world with MTSI, I I've got a ton of contacts on LinkedIn and Facebook from the drone world, right? And so having you on, you're like a star in that community because of what you did. Can you kind of give us your own introduction on who you are and what you've done and what you're doing?
Yeah, sure. Been in the business for over 20 years now, the drone business. Uh, Going back even further than that, I was a veteran of the Air Force. So did my time there and got out. I am a Part 61 pilot. I'm non-current. I had to sell my 172 a couple of years ago because the $100 hamburger became a $200 hamburger. And started my own drone manufacturing company in 2005. That's RP Flight Systems, and started working in public safety and search and rescue specifically in 2005, and grew from there and had, of course, all our trials and travails with the FAA and their whole deal with getting regulations up and running. We were, very deeply involved in that, obviously. And after about 10 years of trying to go through the federal struggle, it was time for us to close up shop. It was a hard time, feeding it, paying the rent, and that sort of thing when they wouldn't let you fly. So I came out and became a consultant and hit the speaking trail and started working search and rescue and advancing search and rescue techniques and using sensors, using drone sensors and kind of non-standard ways to help public safety bring a close to these folks that have gone missing or gone lost. And of course, many times those search and rescues end up becoming homicides. So got heavily involved with law enforcement on that and started doing aerial forensics and working with the body farm. Texas State University did some really good research there with the NIJ and a grant there, and discovering clandestine graves using drones, and still trying to put that research into practice today. I'm teaching with Austin Community College and trying to train the next generation of drone pilots so they can carry on with the legacy and keep doing good things. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Yeah, actually, I was aware of your work before I ever met you. There was a young girl that in Dehesa, California, that came up missing, and you found her.
That's Amber Dubois. That's I remember
Yeah.
most of the cases. I may be 70 years old, but I try to remember them as much as I can.
Yeah. So then I got to actually meet you and see what you're doing, and that was very interesting how fast things opened up. Can you tell us about the lawsuit and how that panned out?
Yeah, the lawsuit was one of those things that I had about met my tolerance level for everything federal and the bureaucracy. And we were on a search one time and searching for a 6-year-old child that was missing, and he'd been missing 5 days. And as a pilot, I tried to do the right thing, and I called the air traffic control and told them I was going to be flying a drone in this area. And they asked me, they said, how long has the child been missing? And I said, well, 5 days. And they said, we don't consider that an emergency. And I was like, wait a minute. And I have the dad standing right there next to me. And I said, I'm not going to tell this individual that his son missing is not an emergency, and you don't think I should fly because of it. And of course, he did tell him, and I was lucky to get my phone back in one piece. But they stood on that one. And I won't say whether I flew or not, but that following Monday, I got a cease and desist letter. And that cease and desist told me to stop using drones for any sort of search and rescue. And I'd had it up to my eyeballs with that one. I was thinking that they were going to try to pull my ticket, pull my pilot's license and that sort of thing. At that point, I just didn't care. And a lawyer in New York had heard about what had gone on through various comms channels. And he said, look, I'll take this thing pro bono because this is stupid. This is bureaucratic overreach. And so we filed a lawsuit, myself and Texas EquiSearch. I was the only named individual on the lawsuit. And we proceeded to go at it hammer and tong for a while. And I never would have thought that, as an individual, that the federal government would come after someone as intensely as they did. But spent, a couple of years on a no-fly list. And of course, I was flying all over the place to begin with. That became a little bit of a hassle. And the lawsuit ended up being dismissed in the Seventh Court of Appeals in D.C., of course, on a technicality. They said that an email cannot be used as a legal instrument. So they dismissed the case. And of course, now we know that emails are used as legal instruments all the time. But anyway, the way that went.
Well, things opened up very fast after that. And I had to make a transition because I got shut down after like 6 months with MTSI because of the restrictions on commercial drone applications. So I had to find something else to do. And so I did other things. I was got in at the ground level with the LED lighting business. So I got all kinds of knowledge about LED lighting that I'll probably never use again. And then I moved to the Rio Grande Valley, and that's where I got a call out of the blue. There was a scientist. He came up with the PCR system for NASA for astronauts to test their food in outer space, and he was wanting to see if they could find a way to use a drone in the air to find listeria in the dirt. And listeria is not harmful to other plants. It doesn't cause wilt. There's nothing. I couldn't figure out how to get a drone in the air to find listeria in the dirt, other than putting some sort of sensor with a Wi-Fi or Bluetooth signal in a drain, like the lowest place in a field, and then that would be the only way I could figure out how to do it. But when I moved to the Rio Grande Valley, that guy's like, oh, because there's more produce warehouses in the Rio Grande Valley of Texas than there is in the whole state of California. And so I was in that business for going like 7 years. I was doing that down there. And then so that's where I got to see, because that guy had like 6 different businesses that all supported the produce industry. And those were multiple streams of income for him. And then I came back to financial services, and I like to talk to trade schools because, it's real easy for me to show a 22-year-old who just graduated from automotive repair school making 60 grand a year that, before he starts figuring out how to spend all his money, put $650 away into a tax advantage vehicle that will make him a millionaire by the time he's 57. Okay. So, it's easy for me to look good because they're young, they got time on their side. Right. But when people are older, maybe they're in their 40s and 50s, and they realize that they're behind, then that knowledge base, using your same knowledge base for multiple businesses, creating those multiple income streams, that's how you can catch up, make up for lost time. And from what I learned in the drone world, there's so many things you can do with a drone. And then I go to talk to this, there's there's a school here in Houston. There's only 3 in the country that teach underwater welding. And they make them get their Part 107 license so they can operate the underwater drones. But that same license, now that guy can get a DJI Mini or a Phantom and, online for $300 and use it to, inspect pipelines or water towers. And then if they find the damage, they can break out their cut and torch and a welder and get to work, but they can get paid on both, right? There's all kinds of different applications that you can use. So this is one of those industries where that synergistic business strategy, that knowledge or that credential, that Part 107 can open up a lot of avenues to create those multiple streams of income. So can you talk about that?
Yeah, you're right. There are a lot of different ways that you can approach, a lot of folks just call them side gigs, right? They want to make a little extra money, and aerial photography is one of the ways to do it. Obviously, the low-hanging fruit is real estate. It's really easy to do, doesn't require any special skills. If you're kind of a halfway decent photographer, you can take nice pictures of houses and interiors and that sort of thing. Historically, I hope you don't have too many real estate people out there, but historically, they don't pay real well if they don't sell the house. That's the problem that you might run into there. But there are a lot of other ways that you can start. I mean, that's pretty much the basic that you start with is aerial photography. And think of all the industries that could utilize that eye in the sky. And you start working up from there. There's arborists, agriculturists, people who do landscaping. There's just so many different ways you could go that doesn't require a high degree of technical skill. And then as you move up the chain and you get into, say, GIS and surveying, then of course you need to up your game a little bit. You need to learn a little bit about GIS and how to fly mapping missions. And there's some specialized software that helps you with that. And then from there, you can go into inspections. Inspections are coming on strong. Cell tower inspection was also one of the low-hanging fruit that was available because it was easy to go out to the country and set up and fly up to a cell tower and take pictures of it all around, as long as it wasn't transmitting microwave. Some people found that out the hard way. But then you could make some pretty good money inspecting cell towers. There are other inspections now that has come out, bridge inspections, building inspections, anything that requires periodic look-see, if you will. And we can do that with high resolution imagery. And we can get close enough to where we can read serial numbers and part numbers on things. We can look at corrosion. It's obviously visual, and sometimes you may need an expert to look at those images, but that expert doesn't have to be out in the field right next to you while you take the pictures. So there's just tons of possibilities out there for side gigs. And I have seen some really industrious people start off in one of my classes and go through and get, the practical pilot certificate. And then the next thing they know, they're off heading up some drone program for a big inspection company and making 6 figures a year, company car, and all the perks. So, it depends on how much hustle you got. And really, get right down to it, who you know. And you can find some good paying jobs just with your little network of people that you know.
So as you're speaking, I have a client that in 2022, his business was he had these acoustic sensors that could pick up the cracks in fuel cells. His primary clients were chemical companies. There's a lot of chemical companies here in Houston. And then SpaceX had a rocket blow up on the launch pad because of a cracked fuel cell, and they called him up. So his income went from like 56,000 a year to 1.38 million in 2023, and then 1.4 million in 2024. And then at the end of 2024, the German company he bought his sensors from approached him about being their U.S. partner so they could get around the tariffs, but he would have to go and, be their agent in the U.S. And then his income jumped to like 2.5 million in 2025 and 26. And so I'd already helped him, anticipating his tax bill. But then there's down the road, when he gets to be old enough to take his mandatory distributions, the tax he's got to pay on that. So setting him up with a supplemental strategy to have enough tax-free income to cover that more than it was in 2023 when I helped him. So we had to increase it that much. But it's the same thing could happen in the drone business, right? With somebody, picking up, some gigs for inspections is one, significant amount of money. It's just like any other business, if somebody does it right, like this guy, if you're making you can max out your tax advantage or tax deferred vehicles at the 900,000 a year revenue. So this guy.
I want that story. I would love that story, Ruben.
This guy, I can max him out at 460,000 a year between the 401k, profit sharing, and cash balance strategies, and it'll save him $170,000 a year in taxes. But he's going to have a tax bill of 110 to 150,000 at age 73. So taking like 60,000 of that tax savings into a tax advantage vehicle that would get him enough tax-free income to offset the taxes, so he doesn't, it's not hurting him that much. When you're 73, it kind of sucks to get hit with a bigger tax bill, right? So we don't want that happening. But that can work with anybody, and it's all about how you're able to create those multiple streams of income or increase, find that real need. Okay. I remember when I first started representing MTSI, first place I called was Maricopa County, the Sheriff's Department, about the border inspections, right? The border surveillance. And the guy they sent me to was their head of air operations, which was their helicopter pilot. And the first thing he said was, "Oh, these drones are going to put us out of business." Right. Yeah. Right. And then so there was a surveyor that I knew in San Diego, my next door neighbor. We're best friends. Our wives and kids are best friends. Our dogs are best friends. And this guy was the guy that he was the one that learned how to use a robotic surveyor scope and a handheld GPS, so he could do more by himself than a 4-man crew could do surveying using the robotic surveyor scope and the handheld GPS. And I tried to introduce him to the drone business. And back then, the accuracy was like 5 centimeters. And he's like, "We need at least 2 centimeters." Well, now it's like 2 millimeters accuracy, right? It's very good. But I still see like 4-man crews here in Houston, setting up to do surveys, right? But the guy that his team leader moved back to Texas, and he's from Breckenridge, and he's in charge. He's head of their water district, and he's got a DJI Phantom, I think a Phantom 3, and he throws it up, does a 360, and that goes out and does a 3D mosaic for whatever he's surveying, but it's just that that's convenient for him to do that. The it's just part of his job. I don't think he gets paid any extra to do that, but realizing there's that technology out there and having that understanding. And we were talking earlier, there's all kinds of applications. There's, like I said, the real estate photography, the precision ag applications, but you would need a multispectral camera for that. The photogrammetry, you need a specific type of technology for that. Okay. Can you give and then I remember working with, what was his name? I can see his face. And he's the one that introduced me to you, that he had the vehicles, right? That command vehicles that could actually, do an oil and gas, like the fracking. Oh my gosh. This guy, the surveyor dude, got a job working for a company that was doing fracking before he became the head of the water district. And they didn't want to use the helicopters because it was too expensive, but it took them a long time. And it was difficult driving around, laying out the cables for fracking. Right. And we figured out with a drone, they may not be able to do it as fast, but a lot faster than what they were doing, and significantly safer, because if the helicopter's flying at 1,000 feet, if something goes wrong, that's high enough to hurt you if it comes down, and it's not high enough to get that auto rotate going on to be able to land, safely. So there's a significant benefit as far as safety goes using a drone versus a helicopter. I know I put a lot out there. Can you address what I'm talking about?
Sure. The safety mitigation is one of the big reasons that a lot of industries embrace drones. For example, the tower inspection, antenna towers. I know we've seen I know Houston's got there towards Missouri City there. They've got 3 towers that are pushing 1,000 feet. And they have to have people climb those towers. And that's the way they did it. Unfortunately, that the tower industry expected at least 2 deaths a year. And obviously, when there's a death like that, then there's going to be a lawsuit, and then it can be very expensive. So in steps the drones, and they can fly this tower very quickly, very easily with high resolution photography, and there is no risk. So you got to look at the savings that company, whoever is required to inspect that tower, gathered just by using a drone. And you touched upon some of the other sensors that are out there. The technology is continuing to improve, and a lot of it has been driven by small drones. They want to miniaturize these payload packages, such as multispectral. Right now, you can get a DJI with a multispectral package. As a matter of that's what I use to detect clandestine graves with. Completely different than what it was designed for. It's an agriculture drone, but I use it for aerial forensics. You mentioned you've got a lot of refineries there in Houston. I grew up in Houston in Galena Park, so I know exactly what that's about. And they have come up with 3 gas sniffers that they can put on the drone. They can do it remotely. So a person doesn't have to go into that cloud of methyl ethyl death. They can send a drone in there and detect whether the atmosphere is suitable to breathe. So the technology is just going to continue. You just need to keep your eyes and ears open to what sort of niche you could jump into to do that sort of thing. And some of these niches, like you say, next thing you know, it's a $1.2 million industry, and you're right in the middle of it. In search and rescue, I've always said there's no money in saving lives, but that's one of the things that I focused on because it was the most acceptable thing to do with the drone. Everybody wanted to save little Timmy lost in the woods, right? So, that's what I focused on. But the industry out there as a whole is looking at anything anything a drone can do, anything that an aerial view or an aerial vantage point can provide them is what they're going for. And it's just going to continue to grow.
Have you, being in the public safety sector, do you know anybody that's actually going, like, they got their police scanner on, and there's an accident somewhere, they're putting their drone up and they're getting there first and getting all the get the scene, the imagery on the scene for insurance companies? Do you know anybody doing that?
Yeah, we ran into some of those during Hurricane Harvey. We were deployed landfall +2, and we ran into several folks out there that were flying for insurance companies trying to get that information. As far as public safety is concerned, back during the beginning, even 10 years ago, 15 years ago, people would self-deploy for a disaster. And sometimes it was helpful and sometimes it was a hindrance, especially in California. California had a real problem with we call them looky-loos. During the wildfires, they would put a drone up to see what the wildfire is doing, completely unaware that there may be a water tug, a flying water tug coming in trying to drop water on that. And it became a very dangerous situation. So from that standpoint, public safety has tried to raise public awareness that if there is a fire or if there's a disaster, keep your drones on the ground and let the professionals do that. And, there are civilian companies that do work for public safety agencies. It's becoming less because now public safety agencies are training and flying their own pilots. But from a standpoint of a disaster or something like that, sure, you can get out there quick and you can get out there very easily and quickly with a drone, but you've got to be careful because you don't want to be a part or become a part of the disaster that you're trying to help alleviate. So again, I caution anyone who is trying to, as a civilian, trying to go into this as, helping the community. It's an admirable and very noble thing to do. But if you're going to do it, you need to do it through your local emergency management office or your sheriff's office or whoever your police department is, and work with them first before it happens.
So, from what I understand, when you get the Part 107 license and then you register on the FAA website, you can put up, what your type of drone is, what the sensors you're using, what your experience is, and people actually get called up. People will find them through that website to hire them.
There are drones as a service industries out there that you can put your profile, if you will, up there, your professional profile. And absolutely, you put yourself in a labor pool and someone could tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, we've got this job for you. Most of the time they're on an as-bid basis. That Part 107 does give you legal license to fly any commercial operation using a drone. Doesn't necessarily mean you have the technical skill to do it, but you have the legal license to do that if you so desire.
Okay, so I stumbled onto a guy when I got here in Houston that he does the training for the safety training for people to go out and work on the oil platforms out in the Gulf, which they can make significantly more money doing that. Yeah. But he was telling me that they have that there are opportunities using drones out there, flying around in by basically surveillance over those platforms. And then another guy, he was from Indiana, and he got a gig, and I've heard more people doing this, actually doing, every day, going up and getting 360 view on construction sites for the the project managers to be able to monitor the progress of their construction sites. And that seems to be a pretty popular gig for guys in the drone world too.
Yeah, construction is another one that's coming on strong. Progress photos are definitely one of the things that that they're focusing on, because time is money, and they want to keep up with the material that's going into it, the time it's taken, and they can do better projections on when the project's going to be completed. And the extra added benefit is that it can provide security as well. They can keep up with equipment and make sure that the equipment that makes it to the construction site stays at the construction site. Um, but even if you go back to the very beginning, like you say, the accuracy has come up so significantly from even 10 years ago that before the first shovel turns dirt, you can do a complete topography of the plot and know where all your elevations are, what your sinks are, that sort of thing that you're going to have to remediate. So it's a great resource management tool before the first shovel even turns dirt.
Yeah, as you're talking, I remember I had one of my buddies that I was in the SEAL teams with got was the security manager for the port of Long Beach. And this is right in the very beginning when I first got involved with the drone world. And he was really resistant to it. But I found out from him that all the ports, whether it's the port of Houston or Long Beach or San Diego, they're getting probed all the time. They're getting, people want to get in there and steal their stuff, right? To break into their Connex boxes and take whatever it is, whatever it could be. They're constantly, they got these, they come out with these drones that sit on a platform that charges them, and also they're basically a stationary camera until something is going on, and then they take off, and then they can follow the bad guys or whatever, right? Now that would be something, I don't know if somebody would actually get, all right, that's going to be my business, or if somebody who has a ranch or a storage facility or whatever would, have that, set that type of those type of platforms up for themselves. But it makes sense, right?
Public safety is already looking at those. It's called, the program is called DFR, or Drones as First Responders. And there was a couple of cities in California that actually did the pilot, and they would, like I say, they sit in a box. It's weatherproof. They land in them. The clamshells close up. They're basically on standby all the time. And if they have a call go out, dispatch can open up the box. They usually hand it off to a pilot that's somewhere nearby, and they can fly beyond visual line of sight and actually go to the address and then stream the video back to the responding officer. So same concept applies in any security situation. As a matter of fact, you're going to see traffic cameras that have the similar situation where they sit and perch and look at the roadways for long periods of time. And then if there is a wreck or a pileup or something like that, the drone can deploy, go out and see how bad it is, and start streaming information back to the first responders. So again, that's public safety, but they are pushing the edge to try to get that technology to help us as a community, right? Trying to get home from, a 5 o'clock rush when that happens. But again, you got to keep up with technology, and you got to watch what's going on, because it is changing really, really fast.
Like you see a lot of these videos of these high-speed chases. So, and what you just said, do you think that using the drone technology to follow somebody, who's committed a robbery or whatever, vices a lot safer for everybody.
Yeah, imagine a string of those, down a stretch of highway or even, off the highway to a certain degree. The high speed chase goes away when the officer pursues that individual. And if a drone is up 200 feet, 300 feet, 400 feet, they can't see it. They don't know it's behind them. They slow down because the cop's not after them anymore. And then it allows law enforcement to set up ahead of them or to be able to anticipate where they're going and intercept them. So that's gonna come, especially as drones start improving their endurance. Right now, we're looking at about 45 minutes. So you got a 20-minute time that you could track out, and then you got a 20-minute flight back. So as that endurance increases, you'll see more applications like that.
That's interesting what you said. A few years ago, I know that like the lithium that they use for the batteries, it was, primarily came from China. And then a few years ago, they found significant lithium deposits in Arkansas, which is having and who primarily the main company, ExxonMobil is the primary company that is digging up the lithium in Arkansas. So they can, they have not just for the drones. I mean, there's all kinds of uses for lithium, that now we have a U.S. source for it. Have you seen that making any difference?
The only thing that we've seen is that the clamor over China having a corner on the lithium is that it's gotten a little quieter. And you may have noticed now that they've moved from lithium to the rare earth magnets. China has done a really, really good job of trying to sew up all the worldwide rare earth materials that we use in our drone motors, the electric motors themselves. Well, any high efficiency electric motor. So now you see more focus on the rare earth metals as opposed to lithium. And I'm sure it's because of those discoveries that the Exxon mining, and there's several other oil companies that have a mining arm that are looking into that as well. So that's the change that I've seen so far with the lithium. But again, the Chinese with their labor practices, and they, pay 12-year-olds to work, 14-hour days and pay them 3 yuan. We're going to be hard pressed to compete with something like that until the government makes some changes in the labor side of it. So we'll have to see what happens when it becomes widely available to other companies.
Well, I know that the Chinese, like when it comes to like DJI, they subsidize
They did
their manufacturing, and that's why they're like so much less expensive than U.S. manufactured drone. But you're working with a U.S. manufactured drone company now for what you do, right?
Several, as a matter of fact, would love to, get more involved in the manufacturing side of it, since that's where I started with to begin. But unfortunately, there are not as many drone companies out there that are willing to sell to the public as they are the government. And that's what's hurt us more than anything else. And we'll have to see how Trump does with his drone dominance act that he pushed through, and see where there's supposedly going to be a lot of money pumped into the drone industry from that act alone. And we'll have to see if that's going to help us when it comes to the widespread availability of an economical unmanned aerial vehicle.
Well, I'm thinking of a couple guys. There's one guy named Dragon in San Diego that he makes his own brand of drones primarily for architecture and construction type. And there's another dude in Detroit they took over a hangar in a used to be, not so much, it's only used for like private planes now. They're in Detroit, that he's manufacturing their own type of drones for the same type of reason. And then TJ Diaz, he came up with the coaxial rotors for the cinematography, carrying the heavy lifters for the two red cameras. Is there space? I grew up on a hog farm, right? We started off. My uncles were hog farmers, and we came home. We had a Chevy Vega, and we had two little piglets in a box, and they took over our 5 acres, man, before you knew it, right? And in the beginning, we were making really good money. Then everybody got in the hog business, and the market dropped. And so I'm thinking, in the drone business, is that kind of dynamic happening, or is it building up to be more manufacturers? Is there are you seeing U.S. manufacturers of drones increasing?
Well, my crystal ball tells me, which my crystal ball is just as clear as yours, Ruben, on some of these things. You're going to see an increase for a while. I think there's a need that needs to be met, and that's with producing a NDA compliant drone. I think you're going to see there's going to be more smart VCs out there rather than the B2B model that fueled the turn of the century here, where everybody was trying to get into it and make quick money very, very easily with the drone industry. And with the federal regulation, and this is just my opinion, but the federal regulation that was put in place in 2006 that grounded the drones pretty much burned most of the VCs that thought they were going to be able to turn some good returns on unmanned vehicles. And it allowed the Chinese to catch up. And this is just my own opinion. But there's going to have to be more folks step up to try it. And just like in any business, if you innovate and you initiate and get to market first with it, then you will succeed until other people, like your hog farm, they see it and they go, oh man, let's go do this. And then you have the race to the bottom. And, it's just, that's the business cycle. That's the way it works. If you look at any business, they have their ups and downs, and the drone industry is sufficiently technical that it's going to probably flatten the highs and lows more so than, say, your hog farm, because you don't have to go buy 2 piglets and, go with it. So that's what I see for the near future. I would have thought that the window in 2005 and 2006 was wide open. There were people ready to jump into this industry and just really pour some money into it. And quite frankly, there were. If you look at some of the startups that went and through their whole process in 2006 through 2010, we saw hundreds of millions of dollars of VC money go into these companies, only to have the regulatory side of it kill any possibility of them getting widespread use. So now that we've got a regulation in place, go ahead.
Did you ever did you know what the story about farm intelligence?
I'm not familiar with it, just first blush.
Well, they were using hyperspectral cameras,
Mm-hmm.
and instead of multispectral cameras, so they needed a heavier lifter. So I connected them with Lena Vandy Stapp, and she's a computational biologist, and she's actually the one that taught me how to, about the multispectral and hyperspectral cameras, because it's used in the medical industry, and that's what her background was, right?
Right.
Well, I had her on a conference call with the guys from the company that made the hyperspectral cameras, and they tapped her to be the analyst for farm intelligence. But the problem was they bought these heavy lifters. They were like a mini helicopter, one single large rotor, and the harmonic vibration was too much. It distorted the images, made them not. So they actually went out of business. They bought all these these mini helicopters, and they couldn't do anything with them, and they end up going out of business. But there would seem to be a lot of opportunity, not for the analysts like Lena did, right, and also for the people that could, like, okay, that's the wrong device for this application. That's the wrong one for precision ag. That might be better for, public safety, like flying around the ski slopes looking for, lost skiers or whatever, right? And things like that. It would seem that there would be an opportunity, significant opportunity for consulting in that sector. Do you see anybody that's, like David Copenhaver, right? That guy's got so much flipping knowledge about stuff. I mean, I'm not sure, just beside myself why somebody hasn't tapped him to put together programs for them. I mean, somebody's like, we could like wrap this up. We could do precision ag applications. We could do public safety. We could do photogrammetry and LiDAR. We just need to have, we can hire these Part 107 guys and get this work done. And somebody could create a whole industry out of that. And he would be the guy, right? I would want to implement that kind of thing. I just don't see, but you're in it more than I am. I mean, are you doing just the drone training, the Part 107 license training? You're doing that and search and rescue. What else are you doing?
I'm doing consulting as well. I can write standard operating procedures, SOPs and Gs and that sort of thing, and I can provide, fleet consulting as well. I have my own company, Gene Robinson Consulting Inc., that I do that out of. My current focus is, of course, developing the curriculum and trying to get that set up for Austin Community College so that we can continue to train drone pilots. And one of the things that I've always said, Ruben, is that a drone is just a truck. Okay, we send the truck out and we load it full of what the real value is, and that's the data, that the aerial imagery, the hyperspectral, the multispectral, the sniffer, that's the gold. Now, you've got all sorts of software companies out there that are beginning to look at analysis of that data, especially now that we've got AI going. You'll see more and more people out there. For example, in the search and rescue side of it, I use a package called Locate, L-O-C and the number 8, and that's done by a company out of Canada, usri.ca, and they do an exceptional job of scanning through tons, thousands of pictures, RGB pictures, and extracting the data that you tell it to extract. So there's going to be a ton of analyst jobs out there or software developer jobs that automate that sort of thing, especially with AI. And there are probably just as many opportunities in that realm as there is with actually developing the drones themselves and sensors to put on the drones. So yeah, there's arms and legs on this thing. It's like an octopus, right? There are so many different things that are going to grow because of it. The batteries, the software, the firmware that runs them, chips, motors. I mean, you could just keep going on and on and on about all the offshoot, the tendrils that are going to be required to support the drone industry. And it's not going away. We've discovered that. It's been growing for the last 25 years, and it's going to continue to grow. I like to use Moore's Law. Moore came up with the theory that, and this was with computers, that after 18 months, it was growing so fast that any computer that you had that was 18 months old is obsolete. And with the drone industry, you're looking at even a compressed Moore's Law because it's now 12 months or even 6 months that you see a major advance or an innovation in the drone industry that changes the game altogether.
So it's fairly inexpensive to get, get a course for your Part 107.
That's correct.
Yeah, what's it cost to and you can do it like via Zoom or whatever. People don't have to go to Austin Community College, right?
Right. Right. And that part of it is pretty easy to come by. Drone Pilot Institute has a course that, for $150 that you can take and get practice tests and that sort of thing. And you can get proficient enough to pass the test. And what our focus is over at ACC is not so much the Part 107. We do, of course, teach that part, but it's more the proficiency side of it. As a pilot, as a Part 61 pilot, I remember what my ground school and what my practical training looked like. And that's what I've tried to model this program after. And the FAA has reviewed it and they like it. And of course, you make the FAA happy, everybody's happy, right? So, that's our focus more than anything else. Is the 107 is easy. You can go online and get it. We've recommended it to several people and they've been successful at it. It's like my flight instructor always told me when I got my license. He says, you now have a license to learn. And you just got to apply yourself and learn whatever your trade is going to be.
Now, you mentioned your ground school, to become a pilot. Is a lot of the information for the Part 107 similar to the ground school training for a pilot's license?
There's much of it that crosses over. The meteorology part of it, the airspace and navigation part of it is a direct crossover. I mean, flying is flying is flying, right? You're subject to the winds and the weather around you. So you have to learn that part of it. You have to learn the processes of air traffic control and what airspace is controlled and what is uncontrolled. So that's a direct crossover. And sure, we've heard of many of our students that say, heck, if I'm going to do this, I can go ahead and jump into, a regular flight school and accelerate my way through a Part 61 private pilot's license program, and they've done it. So there's a lot of it that carries over.
Oh, that's perfect. I have a client whose daughter, she's have a hard time getting her motivated, but she thinks she wants to be a pilot, right? But she's not old enough. And I told her about the drone, being a drone pilot, and it's just interesting how some people they're stuck because they can't see the bright path, and then something sparks their interest, and they just take off and they just leave everybody behind. And this is the drone world has done that for a lot of people.
It has.
And it, like I said, for me, with what I do, I'm always trying to find ways to help people make more money so I can help them with what I do.
Yeah, that's a good way to do it.
And then when it comes to until somebody's making enough money where the taxes are a problem for them, they don't really think about them, right? But I've seen it happen. Like I said, this guy, I helped him already, but his income even went up more. So I got to help him. I got to, augment what I've already done for him because his income significantly increased. And this in industries, what do they call it? Disruptive technologies. This kind of thing happens all the time.
Yep.
It
does.
Well, I'm honored to have you on. Like I said, what you did, if you wouldn't have done what you did, this industry wouldn't be as far as it is now. You caused them to open it up, which is interesting. You think you'd be talking all over the place, man. That would be your new business. Get paid to go talk to somebody.
I would be happy to do that. Just send them my way, Ruben. But you know what they say about the pioneers? pioneers get the first arrows and spears, and I got them.
Well, there's if you want to become a better public speaker, right? I had Luisa Montavo, and we were part of the same Toastmasters club in Far, Texas. And in 2019, she was the first runner-up for the Toastmasters International Speech Contest. And then in 2024, she actually won the whole thing. And then we were both part of the John Maxwell Speakers Club. And so I came here to Houston, and I was wanting to see if there was somebody doing that here in Houston, and nobody's doing that. That didn't take off as far as their programming did, but they got my name, and somebody called me up, and he's like, "Yeah, for just $6,000, I can make you a better public speaker." And I'm like, "Who are you?" I know Luisa Montavo, right? And I'm like, you know what? So if you want to capitalize on that aspect of your what you're doing with drones, I can connect you directly to Luisa Montavo. So well, I'm so delighted that you were able to come on. If you got so I'm using StreamYard. So it'll process this, and I'll put it on my YouTube channel, and it'll break it up into little vignettes, little mini little shorts, and I'll send those all to you, and you can use it for however your marketing or whatever, your classes or whatever. And I really appreciate you coming on. There's, like I said, I got so many people from the drone industry on my LinkedIn and Facebook. I'm sure they're going to be wanting to tune in and watch this video once I get it produced. So,
well, if they need a gray beard, I got it, and I can help them.
The gray beard. So you're not you just teach the classes for Austin Community College.
Yeah, I'm actually adjunct faculty there, and develop the program and the curriculum, and I teach it as well. So yeah.
Now, did you do anything with the Unmanned Vehicle University?
No, I did not.
No, that was the other Gene, right? The Gene Payson. He did that.
Right, Gene Payson. That's right. Wasn't me.
Yeah. I got you guys confused for the longest time.
I know.
So I knew him because the guy I was partnered with in Dallas, he had his background in making the RC planes. Everybody thought it was going to go that direction, right? And so that's how Gene, the other Gene, that's what he was doing. That's how he slid into the drone world, was from the hobby side.
Yep.
In that wild. All right. Well, thank you again for coming on. As soon as I get this all produced, I'll send you the videos and the shorts. And next time you come to Houston, let me know. Next time I head out to Wimberley or Jacobs Well, I'll look you up.
Yeah, do that. I'm here.
All right. Have a great day.
Okay, we'll see you. Bye.
Bye-bye.